The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It was the place where all the great species of the galaxy came together to talk, to trade, and to solve their problems without war. The Grand Chamber on the planet Valanthos Prime was enormous. It could hold representatives from over 400 different alien species, and on this day, almost every seat was filled. Humanity had only been part of this great gathering for 37 years. In galactic terms, this was nothing. Some species had been members for thousands of years. They looked at humans the way an old man might look at a child who had just learned to walk, curious, sometimes amused, often dismissive. The human delegation sat in a small section near the outer edge of the chamber. Their leader was Ambassador Daniel Carter, a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 15 years learning the ways of galactic politics. He knew how to smile when others insulted him. He knew how to wait when others rushed. And he knew, better than anyone else in the room, that something was very wrong today. The session started like any other. Minor disputes were settled. Trade agreements were approved. Then High Arbiter Vorthax of the Kethari Dominion rose to speak, and Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The Kethari were ancient. They had been part of the Assembly since its founding. Their bodies were made of living crystal that glowed with inner light. They were beautiful, in a cold, hard way, and they were powerful. Very powerful. Vorthax's crystalline form pulsed with blue light as he addressed the chamber. His voice was smooth and confident. "Fellow members of the Assembly," he began, "we bring grave news. We have evidence that the human colony on Meridian IV has committed terrible acts against our people. Human ships have attacked Kethari mining vessels in neutral space. 14 of our ships have been destroyed. 2,000 of our people are dead." The chamber erupted in whispers. Daniel stood immediately. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. "The Assembly recognizes the human delegation," said the speaker, an ancient creature who had held this position for centuries. "These accusations are lies," Daniel said. His voice was calm and clear. "Meridian IV is a farming colony. 60,000 civilians live there. They grow food. They raise families. They have no military ships. They have no weapons capable of destroying anything." Vorthax's body flickered with what might have been amusement. "We expected denial. The guilty always deny. That is why we have prepared something special." He waved one crystalline arm, and holographic images appeared in the center of the chamber. They showed ships attacking Kethari vessels. The ships had human markings, fabricated, Daniel said. "Anyone with basic technology could create such images." "Perhaps," Vorthax replied. "That is why we move that the Assembly authorize a peacekeeping force to occupy human space until a full investigation can be completed. Surely, if humanity is innocent, they have nothing to fear." Daniel looked around the chamber. He saw representatives who had dined at his home, species who had praised human scientists and artists, trading partners who had made fortunes from human goods. One by one, they looked away. The vote was called. Species after species voted with the Kethari, even those who had called themselves friends of humanity, even those who had signed treaties of cooperation. The motion passed by an overwhelming margin. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. Not surprise. He had known this day might come. He had hoped it would not. He had worked for 15 years to prevent it. But he had always known. "Ambassador Carter," Vorthax said, and there was satisfaction in his voice now. "I must inform you that the peacekeeping force has already been deployed. Your colony on Meridian IV is being secured as we speak. For the safety of all." "Of course." Daniel touched the communicator on his wrist. A small gesture. "Almost nothing." "Is that so?" he asked quietly. "Humanity would be wise to accept this gracefully," Vorthax continued. "Your species is young. You lack the resources to resist. You lack the ships. You lack the experience. Cooperation will make this much easier for everyone." "High Arbiter," Daniel interrupted. "I need to show you something." He tapped his communicator again. A massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, replacing the fake images of human attacks. It showed space above Meridian 4 in real time. The Kethari peacekeeping fleet was there. 100 warships in perfect formation, their weapons pointed at the planet below. They looked unstoppable. Then, from the shadow of the planet, other ships began to appear. They were unlike anything in the galactic catalog. Massive, angular, dark. They moved with a precision that spoke of advanced technology. And there were hundreds of them. The chamber fell silent. "What you are looking at," Daniel said, "is the actual human fleet, not the merchant ships and exploration vessels we have shown you for 37 years. The real fleet. The one we built while you were watching our traders and scientists." More ships kept appearing. The Kethari fleet was surrounded. "We have known about Kethari plans for humanity since before we joined this assembly," Daniel continued. "We found records, evidence, proof of what you have done to other species throughout history. 17 spacefaring civilizations, all destroyed, all erased, all through manipulation and lies in this very chamber." Vorthak's form was flickering rapidly now. "This is impossible. You are a young species. You could not have. We could. We did." Daniel's communicator beeped. He looked at it, and his face grew hard. "The Kethari peacekeeping force has just fired on Meridian the 4, he announced. 17 civilians are confirmed dead, including 4 children. He gathered his materials slowly, carefully. Every eye in the chamber was on him. "Humanity withdraws from this assembly," he said. He nodded to his delegation, and they began walking toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the absolute silence. Then the silence broke. Representatives started shouting. Some demanded explanations. Others called for immediate action. The chamber descended into chaos. On the holographic display, still floating at the center of the room, the first Kethari warship disappeared in a flash of light. Then another. Then another. Daniel Carter did not look back. He walked out of the grand chamber with his head held high. And behind him, the galaxy watched in terror as everything they thought they knew about humanity burned away like morning mist. The war had begun. Admiral Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance and watched the Kethari fleet die. He felt no joy in it. These were living beings, even if their bodies were made of crystal instead of flesh. But they had attacked his people. They had killed children. And they had been planning to destroy humanity for decades. The Kethari ships tried to run. They turned their engines to maximum power and attempted to jump into hyperspace. But the human fleet had already deployed jamming devices that blocked their escape routes. One by one, the crystal ships were disabled or destroyed. Lieutenant Commander Amy Nguyen stood at the tactical station, her fingers moving across holographic controls with practiced ease. She had trained for this moment her entire adult life. All of them had. "Admiral," she reported, 47 enemy ships destroyed, 32 disabled and requesting surrender, 21 still fighting. "Accept their surrenders," Mitchell ordered. "Disable the rest, without destroying them if possible. We need prisoners. We need witnesses." Throughout the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The young species called humanity, which everyone had dismissed as harmless, had just defeated a Kethari war fleet in less than an hour. The ships they used were unlike anything anyone had seen before. Their weapons were terrifyingly effective, and there were so many of them. Emergency sessions were called in governments across known space. Intelligence agencies worked through the night, trying to understand how they had missed something so big. How could an entire military have been built in secret? How could technology this advanced exist without anyone knowing? The answers came slowly, and each one was more disturbing than the last. Humanity had entered galactic society 37 years ago. They had seemed eager to learn, happy to trade, and excited to explore. They had sent scientists to study with the great minds of older species. They had sent merchants to open new markets. They had sent diplomats to build friendships. What no one had realized was that they had also sent spies. In the first year of contact with the galaxy, a human exploration vessel had discovered something in an abandoned station at the edge of Kethari space. Old records, ancient files, evidence of something horrible. The Kethari had not always been the respected leaders of the Galactic Assembly. They had earned that position through murder, on a scale that was hard to imagine. Over 8,000 years, they had identified species that might one day challenge their power. They had manipulated the Assembly against these species, using false evidence and political tricks. Then they had watched as these species were destroyed, their worlds burned, their people scattered or killed. 17 civilizations, gone, erased from history, all because the Kethari saw them as potential threats. Humanity had found the proof. And they had realized immediately that they were next on the list, so they had prepared. On the colony world of New Portland, Dr. Katie Morrison addressed a gathering of military and civilian leaders. The room was tense. Everyone knew that the war had truly begun, and no one was certain how it would end. When we discovered the truth about the Kethari, we had a choice, Katie explained. She was a small woman with dark hair and tired eyes, but her voice was strong. We could have revealed everything immediately. Gone to the Assembly with our evidence. Asked for justice. She paused and looked around the room. We considered it. We debated it for months. In the end, we decided it would not work. The Kethari had too much power, too many allies, too much control over how information flowed through galactic society. If we had accused them without being able to defend ourselves, they would have destroyed us just like they destroyed the others. The holographic display behind her showed intercepted Kethari communications, messages discussing humanity, assessments of human psychology and capabilities, plans for when and how to move against Earth. They were already watching us, Katie continued. They saw us as a threat from the beginning. We were too independent, too creative, too unpredictable. They had been planning our destruction since the day we made first contact. For 37 years, humanity had played a careful game. They showed the galaxy what it expected to see. Curious scientists, eager merchants, friendly diplomats. Behind that mask, they built warships in hidden shipyards. They developed weapons based on physics that other species had never explored. They trained soldiers and commanders for a war they hoped would never come. Now that hope was gone. Ambassador Daniel Carter was no longer on Volanthos Prime. He had been evacuated to a secure location hours after leaving the Assembly. Now he sat in a small room, recording messages that would be broadcast across the galaxy. We did not want this, he said into the camera. His face was tired, but his voice was steady. We spent 37 years hoping we were wrong, hoping the Kethari would change, hoping they would leave us in peace. They did not. He held up a data crystal. This contains evidence. Real evidence, not fabrications. It shows what the Kethari have done to 17 species over 8,000 years. It shows their communications about humanity. It shows their plans. We are releasing all of this to every news service, every government, every independent researcher in the galaxy. Look at it. Study it. Verify it. The truth will speak for itself. The broadcasts went out. The evidence was examined. And slowly, the galaxy began to realize that humanity might be telling the truth. Some species refused to believe it. The Kethari were ancient and respected. Humanity was young and unknown. It was easier to think the humans were lying, but others looked more carefully. They found things in the evidence that could not have been faked. References to events that only the Kethari should have known about, technical details that matched classified information. And in some cases, species found records in their own archives that confirmed what humanity was claiming. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Now they began to grow. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Mitchell received his new orders. The fleet was to hold position at Meridian 4 and prepare for the counterattack that was surely coming. The Kethari would not accept this defeat. They had too much to lose. How long do we have? Amy Wynn asked. Intelligence says 3 weeks before they can assemble a proper response fleet, Mitchell replied. Maybe less if they call in favors from their allies. And our reinforcements? Mitchell looked at the tactical display. More human ships were arriving every hour, jumping in from hidden bases across human space. "We will have enough," he said. "We have to." The galaxy had changed forever in a single day. The balance of power that had lasted for millennia was broken, and in the darkness of space, two civilizations prepared to fight a war that would determine the fate of countless worlds. There was no going back now. 3 weeks passed, and the galaxy split apart. The Cathari moved quickly. High Arbiter Vorthax might have been arrogant, but the Dominion had other leaders who understood the danger they faced. They sent diplomats to every allied species. They made promises. They made threats. They called in debts that were thousands of years old. 6 species answered the call. Together with the Cathari, they formed the Coalition for Galactic Order. Their combined fleet numbered in the tens of thousands. They declared humanity a danger to all civilized life and began preparing for a war of extermination. But not everyone believed the Cathari anymore. 4 species quietly withdrew from the coalition before it was even announced. 12 more declared themselves neutral. They would not fight for humanity, but they would not fight against them either. They wanted to wait and see what the truth really was, and 3 species did something that shocked everyone. The Vorathi were an old and proud people. They had traded with humanity since first contact. They had invited human scientists to their universities and human artists to their galleries. When the evidence about the Cathari was released, the Vorathi were among the first to examine it carefully. "We have verified these records," their leader announced to the galaxy. "The Cathari claims against humanity are false. The human claims against the Cathari are true. The Vorathi people will stand with humanity." The Chelk came next. They were an insectoid species, their bodies covered in hard shells that gleamed like metal. 2,000 years ago, they had nearly been destroyed in a war that most historians blamed on their own aggression. The evidence released by humanity told a different story. The Chelk had been set up by the Cathari, just like so many others. "We remember," the Chelk Queen said in her broadcast. "We remember the lies. We remember the betrayal. We remember the dead. Today, we choose a different path." The Morden were the third. They lived in the oceans of their homeworld, their long bodies flowing through water like living ribbons. They were peaceful by nature, preferring trade and art to war, but they had studied the evidence, and they had made their choice. "Truth matters," their speaker said simply. "We stand with those who speak it." Humanity suddenly had allies, real allies. Not the fake friendships of the Galactic Assembly, but species who were willing to fight and die beside them. Commander Nathan Brooks led the first joint operation. His task force included human ships, Vorathi cruisers, and Chelk fighters working together for the first time in history. Their target was a Cathari prison moon called Tharvex. The battle was short and brutal. The prison guards had not expected an attack, and they were overwhelmed in hours. But what the rescue teams found inside the prison changed everything. Tharvex was not just a prison. It was a laboratory. The Cathari had been experimenting on prisoners from dozens of species. Genetic modification, neural manipulation, things that violated every law of civilized society, and they had been doing it for centuries. Vorathi Fleet Commander Zelvosh walked through the cells with Nathan Brooks beside her. Her face was gray with shock and rage. In one wing, they found prisoners from her own species. They had been changed, twisted. Some of them no longer looked like Vorathi at all. "How long?" Zelvosh asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "How long have they been doing this?" Nathan looked at the files they had recovered from the prison computers. "The oldest records here are over 300 years old. But there are references to other facilities. Older facilities. This is just one place." The footage from Tharvex was broadcast across the galaxy. It could not be faked. It could not be denied. The prisoners were real. The experiments were documented. The Cathari had been committing crimes against life itself. More species abandoned the coalition. Some joined humanity. Others retreated into neutrality, too afraid or too confused to pick a side. But the core of the coalition remained strong. The Cathari and their most loyal allies had too much to lose. If humanity won this war, they would face justice for 8,000 years of evil. They had no choice but to fight. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Brennan met with the combined chiefs in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with screens showing fleet positions, supply lines, and intelligence reports. "We have confirmed that the coalition is preparing a major attack," Lisa said. "Their target is the Kepler system, our primary shipyard." General Derek Hayes studied the tactical display. "What are their numbers?" 1,200 ships, possibly more. "They are pulling forces from across their territory. And our defenses?" Lisa paused. This was the hard part. 3 orbital platforms and 47 ships. "We can call in reinforcements, but they will not arrive in time for the initial attack." The room was silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Kepler would be outnumbered more than 20 to 1. "Then we hold them as long as we can," Hayes said finally. "We make them pay for every ship, every kilometer, every minute. We buy time for reinforcements and for Operation Distant Thunder." Operation Distant Thunder was humanity's secret weapon. Not a bomb or a fleet, but something more subtle. A strike at the heart of Cathari power, using technology that the coalition did not know existed. If it worked, it could end the war. If it failed, nothing else would matter. "What about our allies?" asked Admiral Mitchell, joining the meeting by hologram from the Defiance. "The Vorathi are sending everything they can spare," Lisa replied. "The Chelk are mobilizing their home fleet. The Morden are providing support ships and medical vessels. But they have their own borders to protect. We cannot expect them to win this war for us. We never expected anyone to win it for us," Hayes said. "We have been preparing for this fight for 37 years. Now we see if those preparations were enough." Across human space, ships began moving toward Kepler. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Engineers worked around the clock to ready every weapon, every system, every piece of equipment that might make a difference. The coalition fleet was coming. The largest military force assembled in centuries, determined to destroy humanity before humans could destroy them. The battle for survival was about to begin. The coalition fleet arrived at Kepler like a tide of death. 1,200 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Cathari crystal ships gleamed in the starlight. Their allies spread out beside them, each species bringing their own weapons, their own tactics, their own hatred. Standing against them were 47 human ships and 3 defense platforms. It was not a fair fight. It was not meant to be. Admiral Lisa Brennan commanded the defense from the orbital platform called Sentinel. She watched the enemy fleet approach on her tactical display and felt a cold calm settle over her. She had known this moment would come. She had trained her whole life for it. "All ships, this is Admiral Brennan," she announced over the fleet communication channel. "We all know the odds. We all know what is at stake. Our job is to hold this line as long as possible. Every hour we buy is an hour for reinforcements to arrive. Every ship we destroy is one less ship that can threaten Earth." She paused and looked at the faces of her bridge crew. Young men and women who had volunteered for this duty knowing they might not survive it. "Fight well," she said. "Make them remember us." The coalition attack began with a wave of missiles. Thousands of them, filling the space between the fleets with trails of fire. The human defense platforms opened up with everything they had. Point defense systems shot down missiles by the hundreds, but there were too many. Sentinel shook as the first impacts hit. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Weapons Station 4 destroyed. 17 dead. "Return fire," Brennan ordered. "All batteries." The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and turned through space, firing at anything that moved. The cruiser, Relentless, commanded by Captain Megan Torres, led a squadron of destroyers into the heart of the enemy formation. They were trying to reach the coalition command ships, hoping that killing the enemy leaders might slow the attack. They made it halfway before the trap closed around them, "We are surrounded," reported Lieutenant Dave Collins from the tactical station. 6 enemy cruisers and over 40 fighters. Captain Torres looked at the display. There was no way out. No reinforcements coming. Just her ships and the enemy. "Then we take as many of them as we can," she said. "All ships, target the nearest cruiser. Fire everything." The Relentless and her escorts fought for 19 minutes. In that time, they destroyed 2 enemy cruisers and damaged 3 more. When the Relentless finally died, her hull torn apart by concentrated fire, she was still shooting. Captain Torres was at her command chair when the bridge was breached. She never stopped giving orders. Across the battlefield, the defense platform Guardian fell next. Its commander, Captain Stephen Park, ordered his crew to evacuate, while he stayed behind to keep the weapons firing. The evacuation shuttles were still launching when Guardian exploded. Only Sentinel remained. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "we have lost 60% of our fleet. Coalition forces are breaking through toward the shipyard." Brennan checked the time. 4 hours. They had held for 4 hours. It was not enough. Reinforcements were still 2 hours away. "Contact the shipyard," she ordered. "Begin civilian evacuation. Get everyone out." Transport ships began lifting off from the shipyard, carrying thousands of workers and their families. Coalition fighters tried to intercept them, but the surviving human warships threw themselves into the enemy's path. The destroyer Indefatigable rammed a coalition carrier that was about to launch a missile strike against the transports. Both ships were destroyed. 200 human crew died to save 4,000 civilians. Brennan watched her fleet die around her. Every loss was a name she knew, a face she remembered, a person who had trusted her to lead them. She did not look away. She owed them that much. "Admiral, we have incoming signals, multiple hyperspace signatures." For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. Then the tactical display updated, and she saw the truth. It was not human reinforcements. It was another coalition fleet, coming to finish the job. "Sentinel, this is Commander Brooks," crackled a voice over the emergency channel. "Hold on. We are coming," Brennan frowned. Brooks was supposed to be light years away. Then the new ships appeared, and they were not coalition at all. Vorathi cruisers, Chelk fighters. And behind them, the massive hulls of Morden support vessels. The Allied fleet had arrived, pushing their engines beyond safe limits to reach Kepler in time. "Sorry we are late," Brooks said. "Traffic was terrible." The coalition found itself fighting on 2 fronts. The Allied fleet tore into their rear formations while the surviving human ships regrouped around Sentinel. The enemy advance stalled, but the battle was far from over. Both sides were bleeding. Both sides were exhausted. And somewhere in Kethari space, Operation Distant Thunder was about to change everything. The 12 ships of Strikeforce Thunder had been traveling for days through secret hyperspace routes that humanity had never shared with anyone. Their experimental drives allowed them to do something that every scientist in the galaxy believed was impossible. They could jump directly into the heart of a star system without using established transit points. Commander Ethan Cho led the strike force from the bridge of the Indomitable. His mission was simple: get to the Kethari homeworld. Find the truth. Show it to everyone. "Emergence in 30 seconds, reported his navigator. Cho gripped the arms of his command chair. If their calculations were wrong, even slightly, they would appear inside a planet or a star. There would not even be time to know they had failed. 10 seconds. 5. Emergence. Space twisted around them. For a moment, reality itself seemed to tear apart. Then they were through. Floating in orbit around the Kethari homeworld. Alarms immediately sounded. The Kethari had detected them. Defense platforms were powering up. Patrol ships were turning toward them. "Begin transmission," Cho ordered. "All frequencies, all languages. Show the galaxy what we have found." All. The Indomitable's sensors scanned the planet below. They found the council chamber, the seat of Kethari power. And beneath it, Hidden for millennia, they found the arsenal. Biological weapons capable of targeting specific species. Genetic destruction on a planetary scale. Files showing exactly how these weapons had been used against 17 civilizations throughout history. Citizens of the galaxy, Cho broadcast as his ships recorded everything. What you are seeing is being transmitted live from the Kethari homeworld. This is not a fabrication. This is not propaganda. This is the truth that the Kethari have hidden for 8,000 years. Across the galaxy, the broadcast was received. In the middle of the Battle of Kepler, coalition ships began to slow their attacks. Commanders demanded explanations from their leaders. Some refused to continue fighting. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. The coalition shattered like glass. After the broadcast from the Kethari homeworld, 3 species withdrew their forces from the Battle of Kepler immediately. Their commanders refused to fight for proven war criminals. 2 more species followed within hours. By the end of the day, only the Kethari and their most fanatical allies remained. At Kepler, the surviving human and allied forces regrouped. They had paid a terrible price. The defense platform Sentinel still floated in space, but she was badly damaged. Half the human fleet was gone. Thousands of soldiers and civilians were dead. Admiral Lisa Brennan refused medical treatment for her injuries until every rescue operation was complete. She stood on the battered bridge of Sentinel and watched the last escape pods being collected. "How many?" she asked quietly. Her first officer checked the reports. "We saved 12,000 from the shipyard. Another 4,000 from the ships. The rest, he could not finish. The rest did their duty," Brennan said. "We will remember them." Across the galaxy, the momentum had shifted. Species that had declared neutrality now began moving toward humanity's side. The evidence from the Kethari homeworld could not be ignored. The crimes were too great. The lies were too obvious. But the Kethari were not finished. In their council chamber, the remaining leaders gathered to make a final decision. They knew they could not win a conventional war. Too many allies had abandoned them. Too many secrets had been exposed. But they still had one option left. The weapon had been built centuries ago as a last resort. It used technology stolen from one of the species they had destroyed. Technology that had taken generations to understand and perfect. It could target a planet from across the galaxy and sterilize it completely. No survivors. No ruins. Nothing left but bare rock. They aimed it at Earth. Commander Ethan Cho and Strike Force Thunder were still in orbit around the Kethari homeworld when the weapon began to power up. Their sensors detected the energy surge immediately. "Commander," reported Lieutenant Kim, her voice shaking. "They are activating something massive beneath the surface. Power levels are beyond anything in our database." Cho studied the readings. His ship's weapons could not penetrate the shielding around the weapon. His Marines could not reach it in time. He had no way to stop it. "Open a channel to the council chamber," he ordered. The holographic image of a Kethari leader appeared on the bridge. Not Vorthax, who had died at Meridian IV, but someone else. Someone older. Someone filled with cold fury. "You have destroyed everything we built," the Kethari said. 8,000 years of order. 8,000 years of peace. Now you will share the fate of all the others who challenged us. "You mean the 17 species you murdered?" Cho replied. "That is not peace. That is slaughter. It was necessary. Chaos must be controlled. Threats must be eliminated. Your species was always going to be a threat. We saw it the moment we met you. Too creative. Too stubborn. Too dangerous. And now?" The Kethari's crystalline form pulsed with bitter light. "Now we end this. Your Earth will burn. Your colonies will follow. And when we have rebuilt our fleets, we will remind the galaxy why they should fear us." The communication ended. On the planet below, the weapon completed its charging cycle. Ambassador Daniel Carter was on Earth when the warning came. He was meeting with the emergency government, planning for a future that might never arrive. When the alert sounded, everyone in the room understood what it meant. "How long do we have?" someone asked. Minutes, replied the tactical officer monitoring the situation. The weapon will fire within 10 minutes. Carter closed his eyes. He thought about his wife, who had died years ago. He thought about his children, who were on a colony world far from Earth. He thought about all the work he had done, all the sacrifices everyone had made, and wondered if it had all been for nothing. Then another alert sounded. Sir, something is happening. The weapon's targeting beam. It has been fired, but it is not reaching us. The weapon, deep in human space, a network of satellites that had been placed decades ago suddenly came to life. They had been disguised as navigation beacons and communication relays. Their true purpose had been kept secret from everyone except a handful of people. The targeting beam reached the satellite network. It was captured, bent, dispersed harmlessly into empty space. The weapon had fired, but it had hit nothing. We knew they would build something like this, Carter said slowly, as the reality sank in. We have been preparing for it since we found the records of what they did to other species. We did not know exactly what form it would take, but we knew they would have some ultimate weapon. So we prepared a defense. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Cho watched as the Kethari weapon fell silent. Its power reserves were empty. It would take years to recharge. Open a channel to the planet, he ordered. All frequencies. Open a channel to a 1. His voice echoed across the Kethari homeworld. Your weapon has failed. Your allies have abandoned you. Your crimes are known to all. Surrender now, and you will face trial. Continue to resist, and you will face destruction. The choice is yours. There was a long silence. Then, the Kethari leader, who had spoken before, appeared again. We choose neither, he said. And then his form went dark as he ended his own life rather than face justice. Not all the Kethari made the same choice. Many surrendered. Many more tried to flee. In the end, it did not matter. The war was over. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. The Galactic Assembly met again, but with new rules and new structures. Humanity proposed a system with real accountability, real transparency, and real protections against the kind of manipulation the Kethari had practiced for millennia. Not everyone agreed with every proposal. There were arguments and compromises. But for the first time in 8,000 years, the smaller species had a real voice. The powerful could not simply destroy anyone who challenged them. The memorial on Meridian IV was completed on the first anniversary of the initial attack. The names of the 17 civilians who died that day were carved into white stone. Beside them were added the names of all who had fallen in the war. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, crew members, and civilians from a dozen different species. Dr. Katie Morrison spoke at the dedication. She looked out at the crowd: humans, Vorathi, Chelk, Morden, and dozens of other species standing together. We never wanted to be warriors, she said. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. What we found was a galaxy shaped by fear. We could not change that with words. We tried. We truly tried. She paused, looking at the memorial. Today, we have a chance to build something different. The galaxy watched in terror as we marched out of the assembly. Let them watch in hope as we help build something better. The applause that followed was not just for her. It was for everyone who had fought, everyone who had sacrificed, and everyone who had believed that the truth was worth any price. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through courage, not through fear, but through truth, and the galaxy would never forget it.